Good morning. The meeting of the Louisiana Tax Commission is hereby called to order. The meeting is being held at the offices of the Louisiana Tax Commission at 1051 North 3rd Street, Suite 225, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The time is 10 a.m. Please call the roll.
Chairman Roussel,
Here.
Commissioner Leone,
Here.
Commissioner Romick,
Here.
Commissioner Guidry,
Here.
Commissioner Frazier,
Here.
5 present and a quorum.
Thank you. There being no old business to take up at this time, we'll move on to the approval of the April 24th, 2024 minutes. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Minutes are adopted. Moving on, we're moving on to item 5 on the docket, consideration of change orders.
Chandrika Banks on behalf of the Louisiana Tax Commission. Today, we have a total of 583 change orders. Staff has reviewed those change orders and requests to approve 570 and place 13 in pending status. Staff requests approval of these change orders.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve 570 change orders and place 13 in pending status for reasons given by staff.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Motion passes. Move on to prior pending change.
Chandrika Banks on behalf of the Louisiana Tax Commission. Today, we have a total of 25 prior pending change orders. Staff has reviewed those change orders and requests to approve all 25. Staff requests approval of the prior pending change orders.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the 25 change orders that staff has previously reviewed and requested for approval.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have any discussion? Any objection? Motion is adopted. I apologize because I skipped an item on the agenda, so we're going to go back to it. Item 4 is consideration of the amended 2024 Orleans Parish Millage Report for contributions to the state retirement system from the Bureau of Treasury.
Good morning, Tanisha Malvo on behalf of the Louisiana Tax Commission. As you know, about 2 weeks ago, we approved the report. However, we were notified by the Treasury's office that there was an error with the report. In column S of their report, it was missing some incomplete data. And so they had to amend their report in order to include all of the data into the report because the values were being understated, and those values have now been placed in there, which increased the gross amount of the bill and the contributions. Therefore, staff requests that we approve the amended retirement system report.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion to approve the amended 2024 Orleans Parish Millage Report for contributions to state retirement system and brewery treasury.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Motion is adopted. Thank you. Now I'll move on to the appeal sections of the agenda. Mr. Hoffman, if you'd swear the folks in.
If you'll be testifying in any of the appeal matters today, I'll have you stand up. I will administer an oath to you. I will indicate to you individually to affirm the oath. Simply state "I do" or "I affirm." I'll also ask you to state your name. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you. Thank you.
David, here I do.
John Clear, I do. Thank you. Y'all may have a seat. Appraisers, I'll administer an oath. I'll have you individually affirm the oath when I call your name. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? George?
I do, George Wallace.
Marquet?
I do, Mark A. Palmer.
Mark?
I do, Mark Gillespie.
Joshua?
I do, Joshua Laverne.
Thank you.
You can proceed.
All right, the first appeal we'll take up for today is the appeal of 2831 Live a Day LLC versus Assessor Earl G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221-74012.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Okay, you can go first. Well,
Okay.
If it please the commission, I spoke with the taxpayer earlier. We came to a consent agreement for the value of the property. I'll give you the breakdown. This is the day 412. The value would be 147,000 for the land, 128 for the building, for a total fair market value of 275.
and as a taxpayer, you agree to that
We do.
value?
Yes.
Since we have an agreement between the taxpayer and the City of New Orleans Assessor's Office, would I have a motion to approve?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agreement between the assessor's office and the taxpayer.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
The next appeal on the docket is the appeal of George H. Copel versus Assessor Earl G. Williams on the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 2322176-216. You may begin.
Morning.
New Orleans Assessor's Office?
Good morning. If it please the commission, the taxpayer and the assessor's office came to an agreement prior to the hearing. I'll have the breakdown for you. It is 128,300 for the land, 342,700 for the building, for a total fair market value of $525,000.
Is the value acceptable to the taxpayer?
Yes, it is.
Since we have an agreement between the Assessor's Office and the taxpayer, do I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the agreement between the assessor's office and the taxpayer.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you much.
The next appeal on the docket is the appeal of John Creer versus Assessor Earl G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221-72082.
Yes. Yes. Okay,
Good morning.
good morning.
You can go ahead and get started.
Which one are we here for first? Which one? Right. What's I never heard the address? Yes. Good morning. I'm here on appeal of 6331 West End Boulevard. The appraisal by the Louisiana State Tax Commission appraiser came in at $305,000. I had an appraisal done by Peter Canizaro, a licensed state appraiser. That appraiser came in at $307,000, and the assessor has it at $388,500. The property has numerous defects that we believe go to cause of a lesser value of the property than the assessor has it assessed for. The defects are the roof is a tile roof that was installed after Katrina. We didn't realize that the weight of the tiles were greater than the old ones and the rafters sagged and collapsed. We braced them up, but we're going to have to pull the roof and re-rafter the whole building in order to make it sellable. This would all have to be disclosed in property disclosure forms. The bid on that was $55,000 alone. It's a one-bedroom house, one bathroom also, which is less desirable. And I'm in agreement with either the State Tax Commission's appraisal or the appraisal of Peter Canizaro. I'd like to make one comment about the appraiser by Assessor Errol Williams's office, which I have gone over. Mr. Williams, this appraiser did not meet with me. He did not walk around the building. He did not enter the building. Both of the other appraisals, the appraisers did just that. They walked around the exterior perimeter of the building and they went inside and saw the obvious defects. But Assessor Williams's appraisal does not contain that. And I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you. Can we hear from the New Orleans Assessor's Office?
Yes. Good morning, Commissioners. So the property was initially valued by the assessor's office, $388,500, which was affirmed by the board review. We provided a fee simple appraisal to the tax commission along with our documentation, which supports the value of $388,500. We took a look at the tax commission staff appraisal. The issue that we have really is that we didn't have any interior photos for it. There was a roof estimate that was from 2012, that was 12 years old. There's nothing new stating any estimate. The comparables that were used were all in excellent condition, which was significant adjustments were made. We feel that that would artificially deflate a value. Comps 1 and 2 are from the inferior part of West Side Boulevard. They're not on the Lake Shore side of West End Boulevard. They're on the numbered streets right around Fleur de Lis. Took a look at sales in the area. In the subject area, I have 4 comps that bracket the subject property. The average sale price in the subject comps area is $276.29 a square foot. 4 comps in the comparable area by the staff's appraisal come out to $195.76 a square foot. Obviously, they're 2 different areas. There's no adjustment made for area, which we think is not a valid value. There is another issue when we took a look at the values or the information provided by the taxpayer during the border review. There's an insured value of $294,000 for the property. Now, we don't use insurance to value property. We use that as kind of like a red flag. If we value your property $1 million and you insured for $100,000, that throws up a red flag and tells us there's something wrong. We need to review it and look forward or look into the matter and make sure our value is correct. If you take the building's insured value plus the land, you're at $474,000. I'm not stating that that is what the value should be, but that's more in line with our evaluation of $388,000 than the tax commission's appraisal at $305,000. Also, I just to kind of differentiate, the $388,500 that we say we initially valued it, that's a CAM evaluation. So that is using a evaluation of the entire jurisdiction of Orleans Parish at once, using a multiple regression analysis and a number of sales. That's completely different from a fee simple appraisal, which does a specific value to that property. It's very, it's specific, using specific sales for that individual property as opposed to an entire jurisdiction. So I just wanted to give you an idea. When I say our initial value was a CAMA value, our revised value was a fee simple appraisal. It's 2 different methodologies coming up with the same value, which is still lower than what the property is insured for, even with the discrepancies and deficiencies noted in a 12-year-old estimate. Our CAMA value is right in line with our fee simple value, which is right in line with the insured value plus land for the taxpayer. The only oddball value is staff's appraisal. And I think the issue that is they didn't make adjustments and they took comparables from an inferior portion of Lakeview and deflated the value. And that's basically all we have for our documentation.
Okay, can we hear from the LTC appraiser?
Good morning. I appraised the property at $305,000 with an undisputed land value of $180,000 and an improvement value of $125,000.
Thank you. Any questions for the LTC appraiser?
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Ms. Palmer, good morning. Just for
morning.
clarification, in your summary of your appraisal, your last sentence mentions that with no sale being most ideal, final emphasis is divided equally. So you basically, checking the math, you did do the average of those 3. Could you just elaborate when you're saying no sale being most ideal and what that meant into your adjustments?
No sale is ideal in that no sale was most like the subject property. So I did do just a weighted average. In my opinion, typically when you use comparables that are all in excellent condition, you actually come up with a little bit higher value. So I felt comfortable with putting 305 on there.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission?
Yes, I have one question, Mr. Chair. Just point of clarification. Mr. Williams, the taxpayer mentioned that there was no site visit or there was anything done to where you actually viewed the property itself. Is that correct in what I heard from the taxpayer?
No, sir. We did not go inside the property, but we did do a site visit. We perform site visits on all appraisals that we do. Unfortunately, we're not allowed into taxpayers' properties without their express consent. And normally taxpayers do not give us consent to go into the properties.
Would that have any bearing on the assessment value that you set on this property?
If we were able to go in and discover anything, sure it would. But if we also went and discovered that was in better condition, it would also the value be higher. Uh, any interior inspection would make a differential in valuation.
Yes, sir.
The assessor's office did not request a meeting with me or an interior walkthrough. Of course, we would have granted it just as if we granted it to the Louisiana State Tax Commission. The assessor's office brought up the insurance value. That, we have to remember, is replacement cost, what it costs to actually rebuild the building. It's like comparing a brand-new car to a used car. What it costs to replace and rebuild the building is higher in some instances than the actual building is worth. And I'd like to make that distinction also. And I'd like to reiterate that we did get a second appraisal from Peter Canizero, a licensed state appraiser, and he came in with a figure comparable to the State Tax Commission's appraiser. And she did do an exterior walk around, which I don't believe the assessor's office did. And also he went inside the building. And we're asking for the value to be placed at what the tax commission's appraiser valued it at.
If I may, commissioners.
Any other
Just-
questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, just a quick question for the taxpayer. You mentioned the roof cost, and then the
Yes.
assessor's office mentioned a quote from 2012, I
Correct.
believe. Your quote is current?
No, it is not. It was that way in 12 when we appealed it. We went and embraced the roof up. But of course, those defects would have to be noted in property disclosure. It doesn't go away because it's 2012. In fact, it's probably significantly higher to have it done. I can't call these people out every 4 years and get reappraisals on defects. But what I will have to do is I will have to explain that to any buyer that walks through the door, because it will be on that 11-page disclosure, whether they buy it or not. And it goes significantly to lesser value.
Yes, sir, if I may, just to kind of do a slight rebuttal. The appraisal provided by the assessor's office was also performed by a licensed appraiser for the state of Louisiana. The assessor's office is in no way stating that the insured value should be used to value the property. We're stating that it is in the ballpark, albeit higher, which is also a support of our value because that's right. The insured value is a replacement cost, but that's almost $500,000. We're not saying it should be that. We're saying it should be $388,000. And the only other thing I'd like to state is the assessor's office was not provided with the appraisal from the Canizero appraisal services, and that the appraisal from the commission has adjustments that are 25% and 30% for each comparable. That is not something that is acceptable in the fee simple world. If you're doing a bank appraisal and your appraisal is using adjustments at 25% or higher for the comparables, they're going to send the appraisal back to you and tell you to go pick comparables that are closer and not make such extreme adjustments.
Thank you. Any other questions by the commission? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion, computed the average in taking all the comps into consideration from both the assessor's office and the LTC, coming up to an average of those 6 comps of 346,600. That would be a land of 180,000, improvements of 166,600, with a total of 346,600.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Yes.
Next appeal on the docket is the appeal of Charlotte v. Creer versus Assessor Earl G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-221-72083.
Proceed. Yes, this is in regards to property located 6327 West End Boulevard. The property has numerous defects that were pointed out to the Louisiana Tax Commission appraiser. The property floods approximately 6 times per year in the basement area due to the alley in the rear part of the building backs up into the property and floods the basement area to within 3 to 6 inches of water. When that happens, we have to take and de-infect it with bleach, disinfect it, and clean the property out in the basement. It's unusable because of the flooding. The foundation is in need of replacement. We do have a bid for the foundation. The bid is old. It's not a new bid, but the foundation needs to replace. It was over $100,000. The roof is a tile roof. That's the original roof to the building that needs to be replaced. The air conditioner is an R22 that is not working correctly. And we have an appraisal from Peter Canizero, my appraiser, and that appraiser came in at $300,000. The assessor does have a copy of that appraisal because on March 14th, his office representative came to my office and requested the copy of Mr. Canizaro's appraisal to use to lower the square footage. So Mr. Canizaro's appraisal is in the hands of the assessor's office. We have an appraisal by the State Tax Commission for $335,000, and Assessor Williams has it at $515,000. We believe that due to the flooding of the property is below base flood. We believe that this would be an extremely difficult property to market and sell on a retail scale because of the damage. We're asking, at the very least, the Louisiana Tax Commission's appraisal of $335,000. I'd like to address the Louisiana Board of Review. I did not appear before the Board of Review because I was in the hospital with COVID and pneumonia. I was in for 5 days. When I got out, I had to go to rehab, and I didn't appear at that hearing. So quite naturally, they moved the appeals through unchallenged, and I'm not saying right or wrong on that. It's just that I wanted to be clear for the record. I was unable to appear because of a medical condition. We do have an appraisal from the Board of Review, and we're in agreement with that appraisal at the very least.
New Orleans Assessor's Office.
Yes, the Orleans Parish Assessor's Office, let's see, let me pull this up real quick. This property, our initial valuation was $515,900, which was affirmed by the Board of Review. We have a couple of instances. We took a look at the tax commission staff appraisal value. There are a couple of discrepancies that we noted. We revised our appraisal because there was a square foot discrepancy. That is correct. We went ahead and sent some data collectors to verify it, and we made adjustments to the square footage and made a revision on the appraisal, and that was the revised appraisal that was sent to the tax commission as part of our exhibits. The issue that we have with the staff appraisal is that none of the comparables in the staff appraisal are raised basements. So obviously there's no contributory value for basement in the comparables because none of them are raised basements. The comparable one, we think that $33,000 adjustment for a porch is extreme because it's not screened in. It's open to the elements. There's $33,000 adjustment for a pool, which we think is extreme considering that there's no match paired analysis to determine that $33,000 is appropriate for a pool. Between these two adjustments, that's 15% of the sale price. That's $66,000. That's the total adjustments of 35%, in my opinion, as a licensed appraiser, seem to be excessive for a comparable. Comparable two, There was an adjustment for $39,900 for a slab of concrete slightly larger than a pickup truck. To me, that seems extremely excessive. There's no covering. It's just a slab of concrete. Comparable 3 is not comparable in any way. It's a new constructed property. There was a bank sale of the vacant lot and it was newly constructed. There is a $14,600 adjustment for a porch, which I think is excessive considering the subject property also has a porch. The total adjustments of this one is 39.32%. And the only adjustments made were construction and condition. These we also feel were superior condition comps, which were used to decrease the value of the subject property. We feel that the value that we have is reflective of market value, considering that we made the adjustment for square footage where we had an error, it was discovered, and we made the significant adjustments. We think that the appraisal is lower value and the Board of Review should affirm the tax commission should affirm the Board of Review's value.
Can we hear from the LTC appraiser?
Yes, sir. Mark Gillespie. I appraised the property at 6327 West End Boulevard, did an interior and exterior inspection. And unfortunately, the sales in that area are mostly in excellent and very good condition. It's an economically attractive and economically active area. So the sales available are kind of, you have to be a little picky when you try to find sales. And of course, I made the appropriate adjustments. The pool adjustment I feel is very called for. The RV adjustment as well, and the balcony and porch adjustments are spot on in my opinion. And also in my opinion, these were the best sales available, although they weren't in fair condition. And I determined the overall value to be $335,000, and let's see, the land value was in at $180,000, improvement value at $155,000.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
I have a question for the taxpayer. Sir, this property is directly next door to 6331,
That is correct.
and 6331 doesn't have the flooding from the alleyway.
It certainly does, and I have photographs of it also.
A similar condition relative to the flooding.
No, it actually, it intrudes into the building on 6327 and 6331. It covers under the building, but does not intrude into the building.
So they're somewhat raised on
The
31.
6331 is somewhat raised, but each and every year it's getting closer to getting inside the building. I have pictures to document it all. I realize time is of the essence with these hearings. I don't want to spend.
No, I'm the asking questions, so no need to apologize.
No, it's quite all right.
Just knowing that area and the fact that there was a canal there way back in the
There
day.
was the New Basin Canal, and they filled it in.
And certainly
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
subsidence all along that boulevard.
The problem with the flooding is the alley with the setting. They've raised both ends, and it comes down to a low point with us. We have complained to the city, my sister and myself, but they just come pour more rocks on the deal. And when they do that, the flooding gets worse. So my sister and I are in agreement that maybe it's not the smart move to keep calling the city, because each and every time they put more rocks, and the rocks seem to make the situation worse.
Thank you.
Also, I'd like to add that I believe that this flooding issue would be a great impediment to selling the property. You have to explain to a potential buyer that, guess what, you're gonna have flooding maybe 6 to 8 times a year. And on the 27, you're below flood grade. She doesn't even have flood insurance. And Mr. Gillespie did appear at the building and did walk around, did do an interior inspection. And Mr. Canizero did the same thing. You all have a copy of that appraisal as well as the assessor's office. And we think a fair price on this at the very least would be $335. We'd sell it for $335 in a heartbeat. If I could find somebody to buy it.
Any additional questions by the commission? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, given the variances Again, with the LTC appraisal and the adjustments, although Mr. Gillespie feels that they are warranted, and just taking the average of all comps using the assessor's reduced value of 421,000. I come up with an average of 378,000. That would be 180,000 for the land, 178,000 for the improvements.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
That's it? Yes, the 444 Lakeshore Parkway.
If it please the commission, this is going to be a consent judgment as well.
That's it? Thank you for your time, John. Have a good afternoon.
Wait, yeah. We just gotta say the value and then you gotta agree to it.
That's fine. Yeah. Quite all right.
Next, we have the appeal of Templar Properties versus Assessor Earl G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-221-72084.
Orleans Assessor's Office.
Yes, sir. I met with the taxpayer prior to the hearing. We have agreed to settle for a value or a consent degree of land 409-200, building 305-800 for a total fair market value of $715.
And the taxpayer agrees with that?
Yes, I agree with that.
Thank you. Hearing that we have an agreement between the assessor's office and the taxpayer, may I have a motion?
I call a motion to accept the assessor's agreement with the taxpayer of $409,200 of land, improvement of $305,800, a total value of $715,000.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Thank you. Yeah, good afternoon. You too.
Next, we'll take up the appeal of Tana Rosenbaum versus Assessor Earl G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-221-72030. I do want to make a note that this taxpayer is not present, but she does agrees with the LTC value.
The New Orleans Assessor's Office.
Yes, sir. So the property at 4420 Bienville Street was initially valued at $417,200. It was affirmed by the Board of Review. We performed a fee simple appraisal for the property. That value actually came out a lot lower than our initial value, and actually a little bit lower than the taxpayer's request. The taxpayer requested $355. Our evaluation or our appraisal came out to $325,000, which we think is fair for the value of the property, considering it's less than what the taxpayer actually requested. We had some discrepancies with the tax commission staff appraisal. Their income approach only uses the GRM from the lowest GRM from the sales comparison approach. Comparable one actually has a GRM of 203. And the MLS information from Comp 2 states that the market is $1.63 per square foot for rental, which was not utilized in the income approach. Comp 3 states that it's sold as is. No repairs will be made by the seller. It's an older roof and a fixer-upper. So in our opinion, that should have been discredited as a comparable. The property is insured for $250,000. We're not saying that that's what the value should be, but when you take the $250 plus the land, that comes out to $368,000, which is higher than the taxpayer's request and higher than our revised value of $325,000. The owner provided to us a CMA that says the property should be valued at $370,000. His market sales come out to $270 a square foot, and that's not our valuation and our documentation. That comes from the taxpayer themselves. So that being in mind, our $325,000 we think is fair, because it's less than they're asking for, and the documentation supplied by the taxpayer themselves supports a higher value than that.
Can we hear from the LTC appraiser?
Marquez.
I appraised the property at 275,000 with an undisputed land value of 118,100 and an improvement value of 156,900.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
I have a question for the LTC appraiser. Is there a reason why you didn't make any adjustments for the land sizes in comparable 1 and 3 and no square footage?
We typically do not make adjustments when the lots are within 1,000 square foot of each other, and that's just across the board.
Any other questions from the commission? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I have a motion to agree to the taxpayer's original request of 100,000 on land, 230,000 improvements, 330,000 for the total.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any
Mis-
objection?
Mr. Chair, just for a point of discussion in the uniformity of the land cost and the assessor's approach to keeping that at the same dollar per square foot, not disagreeing with the total, but is it, I guess, the discussion for the commissioners and maybe some input from the assessor, just to reallocate that to come back to that same total?
I agree.
So we have a motion. It's in a minute. We're gonna agree to the value of the land to keep consistently, and we will adjust the value of the improvements for a total of 330,000, I think is the total. Any discussion on that motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
There's questions during the board review. I don't know what it was for the submission.
I just want to make sure I had the math right on that last appeal. It's 211,900 on the improvements. Is that which one? The very last one we did, Tanner Rosenbond, 211,900 on the improvement. Total value of 330. Okay.
Wait, 3. Yeah. Is our land not?
I have your land at 118,100.
Oh, yeah, yeah, then yes, that is correct.
Okay.
The next appeal is an assessor's appeal. The appeal of Assessor Earl G. Williams versus Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-221-73195 is 3138-40 St. Cloud LLC.
Mullins Assessors Office?
All right. So the assessor's office initially valued the property at 334,800. It was lowered by the Board of Review, which didn't provide us any documentation as to why they made the reduction. It was subsequently valued by fee simple appraisal methodology by both the tax commission and the assessor's office. Tax commission is actually higher than our original value of 334,800. We're asking the tax commission to affirm the assessor's original value of 334,800.
Thank you. The LTC appraiser?
Mr. Mark?
Sorry, just talking away. Thought I was, yes, I did appraise the property for 345,000, the land value 126,000, and improvement value of $219,000.
Thank you. Any questions for the LTC appraiser or the City of New Orleans Assessor's Office? Hearing no questions, may I have a motion?
A call for a motion to accept the Orleans Assessor's Office value of $126,000 on land, $208,800 improvements, total of $334,800.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Next, we have the appeal of Ann K. Fitzgerald versus Assessor Earl G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221-76232.
New Orleans Assessor's Office?
So this property is located on Audubon Street, which is one of the premier streets uptown, New Orleans. We performed an initial analysis of the subject property at $581,000. Our total fair market value for the original value was $612,800 from our camera system, affirmed by the Board of Review, and then the fee simple appraisal was the $581,000. Are we requesting the value be set at $581,000 because we feel like the fee simple appraisal that we performed slightly more accurate than our initial valuation of $612,800. The main issue that we have for this is you can check in MLS number 235-4373. The property was listed for sale at the end of October, 2 months before the lien date, for $650,000 in excellent condition. The tax commission staff appraiser valued it at $500,000 and describes the property at average condition. Now, we're not saying that the sale should be used to set the value, but I find it hard to believe that the condition of the property should go down 2 condition points from excellent to average in 2 months. The property is 1 block from Audubon Park, easy stroll to Farmers Market and Levee, charming Victorian cottage is an entertainer's delight. This is from the MLS listing that was used for the sale of the property. It was a complete renovation in 2017, bath, kitchen, Blue Star range, HVAC, tankless water heaters and baths. That to me doesn't sound like an average condition property. And be in mind that that was 2 months prior to the lien date. If you keep everything the same that the tax commission staff appraiser did, but remove the condition adjustments that they made, their value would be $587,200, which supports our value of $581,000. So that's why we're asking to affirm our value of $581,000. We think it's the most accurate value for this property, considering it's sold for so much higher, and the tax commission staff appraisal would support our value if you took out the erroneous condition adjustment.
Thank you. Can we hear from the LTC appraiser?
Yes, Joshua Laverne, LTC appraiser. I inspected the property at 315 Audubon Street with a land value of $162,000, an improvement value of $338,000 for a total of $500,000.
Questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the LTC staff. Mr. Laverne, in just revisiting what the assessor's office was saying, noting that your condition on the taxpayer property is average, but on your Benjamin property and your Calhoun property, and just looking at the pictures, and certainly that's all that I have, just trying to understand, I guess, question one, you just did an exterior visual of all the comps, or just photos of the comps from listings?
Just photos from MLS.
So how do you make a decision, I guess, just help me understand the difference in comparisons by looking at those pictures between a very good to an average?
It's just an opinion. And what they list on MLS.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the commission?
And just to confirm, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, with the assessor's office, you're presenting that this property sold for $650,000 in October of 2022?
Yes, sir.
In New Orleans Assessor's Office, your request of 581,000 has the land value of 162.
Oh, sorry. Let me just pull it up real quick. Apologies. Yeah, yes, that is correct. 162 land, 419 for the building for total fair market value of 581.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission?
Just out of something that just came up, one of my colleagues brought to my attention, is currently listed on the market right now for over $800,000.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to accept the Orlean Parish Assessor's Office value of $162,000 for the land, $419,000 for the building, for a total of $581,000.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Next, we'll take up the appeal of Stephen Michael Cady versus Assessor Earl G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-221-76235. Taxpayer is not here, but the taxpayer did mention that they are in agreement with the LTC value.
New Orleans Assessor's Office?
Yes, sir. The initial valuation performed by the assessor's office, our CAM evaluation, was $565,800. The board review affirmed it. We came out with a fee simple appraisal value of $554,000 for a 1,615 square foot property on Nashville. We think that's more than fair, and that's a good indicator of value. The tax commission staff appraisal is $500,000, but we do have some issues with that appraisal. Comparable one is a succession property. The description in the MLS itself says succession property subject to court approval. Property recently rented for $1,800 a month. With it being a succession property, that's not an arm's length transaction. It should be discredited from the comparable listing completely. Comparable two is 2417 State Street. It's not actually in the neighborhood. It's 1.6 miles away. It's nowhere near the subject property. And comparable three, there was no adjustment made for size. However, the appraiser made an adjustment at $150 a square foot for the comp number one and $123 a square foot for comp number two. We feel that in lieu of these circumstances, that our value of the 554 is the most accurate valuation for this property.
Okay, can we hear from the LTC appraiser?
Yes, I did an inspection on the property of 428 Nashville, land at 162,000, improvement at 338,000, for a total of 500,000.
Okay, questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the assessor first. Could you confirm a comparable on Laurel that you've used and your value on that?
Yes, sir. Our comparable on Laurel, 6112 Laurel Street.
Correct.
The adjusted sale price was $549,700.
Thank you. And for LTC, Ms. Laverne, do you have that same comparable?
6112 Laurel?
Correct.
Yes.
And that value?
535,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions from the commission? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to accept the assessor's request using that comparable on Laurel and just looking at an average of that, very close to the assessor's request of 554,000 in total, which comprises land of 162,000, improvement at 392,000.
Can we have a motion? Do we have any discussion on the motion? Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Our final appeal is the appeal of Nathan C. Henney versus Assessor Earl G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-221-77090.
New Orleans Assessor's Office.
Alright. Yes, sir. This property is a single-family property located in the Black Pearl neighborhood. It was initially valued at $449,200 for a CAM evaluation. They came and visited us during the open roll period, presented documentation. We made a reduction from the $449,200 to its current valuation of $394,900. That valuation was affirmed by the Board of Review. We're asking to affirm the Board of Review's valuation, considering it's already been reduced once. That $394,900 is supported by the fee simple appraisal that was provided to the commission. That valuation was actually $397,000, but we think that the $394,900 that the Board of Review did was appropriate, and we'd like that to be affirmed. We took a look at the commission's appraisal. There's a couple of issues that we took with the appraisal itself. Some of the comps, comp number 1, comp number 3, they have the distances wrong in the appraisal. They're from a lot further away than what they state in the appraisal. They're also in inferior neighborhoods. Comp number, comp number 3, specifically, we don't think should be included in the appraisal at all, because in the MLS description, it says, this is an investor's dream with so many possibilities. Price below appraisal, don't miss out on this one, which leads me to believe that the sale price, which was less than what it was priced for, is actually less than the appraisal, because they stated explicitly right there, we're selling it for less than the appraised amount. So this is an investor's dream. That being said, I don't feel like that is an arm's length transaction, should be discredited entirely. Comp number 3 also has an incorrect photo. The photo for Neuron Place is not the actual photo of what the property looks like. I'm not sure where that photo comes from, but it's not 8207 Neuron Place. So with all that being said, and considering that the property was already reduced once in the open roll period, we'd like the commission to affirm the Board of Review's value of $394,900.
Okay, thank you. Can we hear from the LTC appraiser?
Yeah, good morning, George Wallace, Louisiana Tax Commission. I did appraise the property at 7518 Hurst Street. Had a sales comparison approach that ranged from 257.2 to 318.1 for a final value of $280,000. I did note a discrepancy on the land value. It was a typo. My report should read 111,000 for the land, 169,000 for the improvement. And again, a final estimated value of 280,000. And I would like to note, Mr. Alvarez is correct. All the data on comp 3 is correct, but the photo is incorrect. Actually, the actual photo that belongs there is very similar to the subject property.
Any questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the assessor's office. I believe you have 4 comps total.
Yes, sir.
Could you describe, 2 seem to be in one similar neighborhood and 2 closer to the subject matter? Take any perspective on the differences in the neighborhoods?
Okay, let me just pull it up real fast. Oh, and just as an FYI, the assessor's office did provide a map with the comparable sales to show that the comps, 2 of the comps are not within or not anywhere near the subject property. The comps you were looking at specifically, Commissioner Romig?
I believe comp 1 and comp 3 are in a dissimilar neighborhood, being closer to the parish line.
Well, so comp 1 and comp 3 are actually, they are in similar areas to our property, to our valuation. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you referring to the map? Because that map is
Yes,
not
sir.
our comparables. That's the tax commission staff appraisal value. I'm sorry, the tax commission staff appraisal comps. That was to illustrate the fact that the tax commission staff appraiser did not have 2 of the comps that they provided in the same neighborhood. Yes, that is correct. That is why I said the comp one and comp three are in inferior neighborhoods.
Okay, my apologies. I had just pulled that from your assessor folder. Didn't pick up that it's LTC comps. Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to accept the assessor's request, 111,000 for land, 283,900 for improvements for a total of 394,900.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted. That completes our appeals. Is there any other matters to come before the commission? Hearing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Call for motion to adjourn.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, we are adjourned